My name is Harley Elliot, and today I'm talking with Fred Elliot, and he's talking with me. Since we both worked in the late 50s and early 60s driving delivery trucks around to the various cafes and grocery stores in town, we thought it might be good to talk about how many of those there were and what's changed since then. Fred, you want to start us off?
Okay. Um, where to do that? We lived just south of, well, in 1949, we lived on Iron Street. Our mother and our stepfather got married, and about that time, we moved to 801 South Front, which is just across the street from Central High now. And and when it was finished, that was the only high. Um, we were there in the 51 flood. During the 51 flood. I was talking about that earlier today. Uh, and we just thought it was great. Um, the water never got in our house, um, but we played in the streets in the water. It was just like I say, it was great for young kids. Um, a few years later, both of us went to work for our stepfather, who had a wholesale fruit and grocery place, and we delivered to all the little neighborhood grocery stores. The one closest to us was Wilson, which was oddly enough on Wilson Street.
Well,
Yeah.
I've put together a list, and I've got 21 different markets during that time.
Okay.
Uh, Four of them were downtown, and all the rest were neighborhood markets, and almost all of them were named for the street they were on. Now, I think there are four markets in Salina, and three of them are a chain market, Dillon's. So that has changed. What I wonder what effect that has had on neighborhood feelings. Like people don't run into each other at the little corner grocery store anymore.
Oh, there's a lot of things that affect that, people running into each other. I mean, air conditioning, front porches. Um,
Television.
oh yeah, television.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I've also got 28 cafes, sit down and have a meal cafes. That's
you've done a lot more work on this than I have.
yeah, and 15 of them were downtown, and then the rest of them were on the margins of town. Now we have what, three downtown, I believe, and almost all the rest of them are out on the margins, particularly the southern margin.
Well, four downtown that I can think of readily.
Well, what are they?
Well, Monty's,
Blue
Blue
Sky.
Sky, The Scheme, Martinelli's, Corky's, and then there's fast food places,
Well, yeah,
and
I'm
then
not counting fast foods.
then the little places I haven't. Well, there's the Mexican place there on Santa Fe. Forget its name.
That's a fast food place, isn't it?
No, no.
Hmm. At any rate, we used to haul bag after bag of 100 pounds of real potatoes into these cafes
Thanks for reminding me.
and stores. Uh, Now I think I haven't seen somebody carrying a 100-pound bag of potatoes for many, many years. So I'm thinking almost all the potatoes we're eating now in the cafes are either dried or frozen. Do you think?
Well, either that or we used to get bananas from South America on the stalk. We had,
Central,
pardon?
Central America, Honduras, Guatemala.
Okay, okay. He was always smarter than me. Uh, on the stalk, uh, they weighed 80 to 100 pounds. We had two rooms that were just for bananas because the temperature had to be controlled all the time. Uh, we were never taught why. And today I don't know why. That the temperature had to be controlled during certain stages of their ripening. But anyway, um, then we cut them apart people would order 10 pounds of bananas, 5 pounds of bananas, 40 pounds of bananas, and we'd cut them apart, put them in a bag or a box, and deliver them. Well, several years after my father sold out, I was talking to one of the workers there who is good friends with us, who had worked for our dad, and he smiled and he said, "This is the way bananas come today. They came packed in 40-pound boxes, handles on each side." And he said, "That's a lot different than the old days, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah, it sure is." And it occurred to me the reason that was done was it's cheaper for a Guatemalan to cut and package those bananas than it was for some Yankee. Yeah, well, that's more corporate power. Shave a few pennies off of your 5 pounds of bananas. So,
Well, another thing, back then, there were 3 wholesale food dealers in town, at least 3. We worked for one, and there was Gamble Robinson, and there was Fleming.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
maybe Cruz, if you want to count that. So, but there was a lot of, I don't know where bananas
John,
come from now
what's
these
his name?
days.
Miller.
I'm sorry?
Millers.
Yeah.
Paul Miller.
I don't know where bananas and tomatoes and all those things come from these
Well,
days.
they come on semi. I see them delivering all over town, and we had little 1-ton vans that then the alleys were open. Deliveries, all downtown deliveries, virtually all, were made in the alleys. I'm just starting to think of more restaurants downtown.
Well, you want to run through my list?
Sure.
Starting at the north end, we have the Standard Cafe,
Yeah.
One Spot, Betty's Fried Chicken, Kent's, the Bee, Sands. Back out east, Al Hart's, the Station, Emma's, Pick a Rib. Coming down North Santa Fe, Al's Grill, Yellow Bonnet, M&N, A&G, Bar B, Newport, 5th Street, Todd's, Merchant's Lunch, People's Cafeteria, Neely's, Wimpy's, Pennant, Waffle Nook, Chili Dog, University, and down south, Kim's and Mars.
You missed Puritan and Casa Bonita.
Yeah, I did miss those, so that makes 30.
Casa Bonita was a beautiful building that in the very old days was a chocolate factory. 4 stories, I think. And they chopped it down to 2. And for once, they did a very good aesthetic job of chopping a building down. It was a really nice Spanish-looking building. And it was torn down rather illegally over a weekend years ago by a guy who's since moved that didn't care much for Salina, I've been told.
So I forgot those 2.
Yeah, and the Puritan was the only cafe in town that you couldn't smoke. I think it was only open for lunch, and all the waitresses, most of the waitresses were from Brown Mackey, and they worked for a meal, as I was told. I don't know if that's a fact or not, but I wouldn't doubt it in those days.
Well, as delivery men, we came in through the back doors, and so we got a up-close look at the kitchens of all these places. Now, for legal reasons, we probably don't want to talk about the bad ones, but where would you say was about the cleanest kitchen in town?
I never thought of that. I'm the negative thinker, so I always think of the worst. Now,
what was the least dirtiest?
I'm not going to go that way either. But some you missed. Duck Walls, Woolworth, Neisner's.
Those were like find the dime stores that had a counter and you could get food there. I sort of thought of those like drive-ins, like the In-N-Out and all that.
Yeah, well.
So I didn't count sundries counters. I didn't count drugstores. I didn't count any of that stuff. These are just sit-down, big meals. And by the way, where would you go to get a good working man's meal? A lot of food?
Oh, we ate a lot at Tony's One Spot over on Broadway.
What was it like? What would a meal be like there?
Meat and potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony was really brilliant, I think. He had the same menu 5 days a week. Mondays he would have this, Tuesdays he would have that, blah, blah, blah. And in later years, Scotty Bell was his cook and kind of took over. I had talked to Tony about it, and he said, I said, is Scotty going to buy you out? Because Scotty was the cook there. He said, I don't know. Scotty's awfully tight, so I don't know how that worked. But Scotty finally ended up in the with his own restaurant. Started out north. He moved about 5 times. I was just talking about that this morning with a friend. Every time he moved, whenever I went there, the same people that were there in 1960 were there in 1981. And his food was so consistent, so good, that people followed him around wherever he went. Finally ended up over in Sunset Plaza until he retired. Same menu. My wife and I would go there every Friday because he had the greatest Salisbury steak, which is just hamburger. And it was wonderful,
But in the old days, one spot was a good place for.
Ate there a lot because it was convenient. I remember Emma's very well. She had a couple of. She had one on. No longer there. The building no longer there, of course.
She had one on 9th Street.
Well, that was later. She had one on Ohio and Pacific.
Right.
There was an old gas station there right next to the junkyard. And God, when she brought you lunch, you could not see the plate. I mean, it was just unbelievable mountain of food. And of course, when you're 16, 17 years old, you ate it. And then had pie. It's unbelievable,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were several good places. The station wasn't bad. Oh, the station was great. I mean, it lasted longer than any of them, except Scotty. It's called the station because it was right across the street from Union Station on Bishop Street. And, for a long time, I think the station was 24-hour. Did you get A&G?
I sure did.
Okay. It was 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
For 40 years. It was there for a long, long time. Even when they remodeled, there was a newspaper article about them. Even when they remodeled, it showed Gus out on the sidewalk drinking a cup of coffee, or selling a cup of coffee, more like it. And he didn't close then, even while they were remodeling it. And I'm not going to go there either. But anyway.
Well, let me run down the list of markets and see what I've forgotten there, okay?
Okay.
We'll start up north again. I'll start with Archie's.
Don't remember that.
Way up there on 9th Street.
Okay.
Almost out of town. Archie's, Smedley's, Al's, Kelly's, Lamer's, Elm Street, Ray's, Sled's, Walnut Street, Mammal 1, Mammals 2, Austin's, Weeks, which we didn't deliver to, Wilson Street, State Street, 12th Street, Powell's, University, East Cloud, Loaders, and the 3rd Street, which we can't remember the name of it. Right on the corner there of where by the Kansas Power and Light thing used to be.
Oh yeah, it was in the black community, which before the first urban renewal came in and basically to me destroyed a neighborhood, a cohesive neighborhood, which personally I think was the reason for it. And we were lucky. We've always been lucky. I've been the luckiest. But we had black friends because they worked for my dad. And they were just great guys, I mean, both of us loved both of them. And one died very, very young of cancer. And so we started out very young, not being prejudiced, um, which I'm grateful for. Um,
Well, there wasn't a lot of race consciousness when we were kids, I don't
well,
think.
not to us,
No, well, of course. I
you
mean,
know.
there was a separate black school, Dunbar School. There was a separate black swimming pool, and there was a separate theater that mostly blacks went to, the Royal Theater.
Well, no, they went to the Fox. But they all
They had to
sat in the
sit in the
balcony. There
balcony,
was
yeah.
a section to the, I don't know what it is, but in the theater, it's the left side, upper left side of the balcony was, quote, the black section.
Yeah.
And of course, back then you could smoke in the balcony.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was going to elementary school, I don't remember a whole lot of even issues about race.
Well, as I say, Harley, you're white.
Well, when I went to from K4, I went to Oakdale, and there were 3 Hispanic kids in my class and 1 black kid. And one day, the teacher called us all together out in front of the school, and here was this Asian kid our age. She introduced us. So and so is from China, and he's going to be a student here. And we'd never seen an Asian kid. I mean, it was really different. And so we kind of were watching, and he was smiling away. And she said, and here's something he can do. And he did some kind of hacky sack stuff, I think with a shuttlecock, but it was off of his feet and his hands and his elbows, and he kept this thing bouncing around and smiling away. Man, we were blown away. This was really cool. We'd never seen anything like it. And so, this kid was instantly accepted because he had this bizarre talent that blew us all away. But I don't remember anything ever being said about, well, so-and-so's Hispanic or so-and-so's black or whatever. And when I went to Lowell for the 5th and 6th grade, it was all white. There were no blacks or Hispanic students there then. Junior high and in high school, very different. But still, there were kind of, everybody stayed with their own. It was kind of a cliquish situation.
Well, I saw racial differences in junior high, mostly again from whites who just, I mean, I couldn't understand it at all. But I felt racial tension mostly in junior high, and of course you're a teenager, and Elvis Presley came along, and James Dean, and I defy anybody to find a photo of James Dean without a cigarette in his mouth. So it's things like that induced young people to start smoking, which is a devastating habit, which I picked up. And but I mean, it was just ubiquitous from people that we liked. Edward R. Murrow never had an interview that he wasn't smoking a cigarette.
Heck, Andy Griffith smoked on Mayberry RFD.
Pardon?
Andy Griffith smoked on Mayberry RFD.
I don't remember that.
Right in front of Opie.
Oh, for God's sakes. Well, FDR smoked, always had a cigarette holder. And they did a postage stamp years ago, and I can't remember who that was.
Robert Johnson, the blues singer Robert Johnson. That's what they used. The only known photograph is a photograph of him full face with a cigarette in one corner of his mouth. They put out a stamp with that photograph minus the cigarette.
Yeah. Well,
is there another one?
I don't know. I thought it was somebody better known. I thought it was like Edward R. Murrow or
that might be too.
Or FDR. But yeah, I mean, it was just iconic with some of these people.
Oh, John Wayne.
Who cares?
Well, he was sold to us as this is who you want to be when you grow up, Bunky.
I was thinking about him yesterday because in the late '60s, when drugs were let's say popular, he came on and said something to the effect that because kids were saying, well, you drank alcohol when you were underage. Yeah, but it wasn't illegal. Oh, yes, it was. I mean, during his period of time, it was illegal, and they drank. They drank lots. So, it's just, so
So he came
hypocrisy
on
is,
and said what?
pardon?
He came on and said.
He said it wasn't illegal.
Oh.
And, somebody, for some reason, wasn't even smart enough to remember Prohibition.
Well, politicians and movie stars are good at passing things like
Yeah.
not inhaling, for example.
Ticket to Ride.
Well, what else? You said the alleys were open in those days. All the deliveries we made downtown were through the alleys. What I remember about them is in the middle of the winter, when it rained and there came these enormous ice ruts in the alley that you drove down. If you didn't get in those ruts, you were in trouble, and even in them, it threw you from side to side all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
I often wonder how we avoided running into somebody stepping out of a doorway.
Well, we had one driver that only by the grace of God did that bastard get through.
Yeah.
Or anybody stepping out of a doorway, because he'd drive through the alleys at 15 or more miles an hour, and you just can't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of the alleys and cold weather, we our father didn't believe in heat, and we had this one. I think our favorite truck was a panel truck with sliding doors and a seat that sat up on a pedestal.
Like an old milk van.
Pardon?
Like an old milk van.
Right.
Yeah.
And no seat belt, of course. And I've thought many times, if one of us would have gotten in a wreck with that, you'd be knocked a block away. There was just absolutely nothing to stop you. But we loved it. Stick shift. The stick came up about 3 feet, and but we'd go to Duck Walls, and they had the kitchen exhaust fan right there. When you open that door, there's the exhaust fan. Boy, in the wintertime, that hot air smelling like donuts came in there, and of course we loved that.
Yeah, and if they were making apple pie especially, it really smelled good.
I don't remember that. I remember that donut smell because it's got that greasy, sweet smell to it that kind of sticks with you for an hour after you leave.
Well, we used to get some freebies in some of those places.
Oh, yeah.
Cinnamon rolls in the Yellow Bonnet and cinnamon rolls in Newport.
Yeah.
Especially in the wintertime when it was cold, they'd give us a hot cinnamon roll.
Well, Central High, when they cook their food, I don't know what they do now. I think they've got a central kitchen somewhere. It's like factory food. And back then it was, when I went there, it was pretty good, and we knew, of course, because of delivering, we knew the major cook, and she'd always give us a piece of pie. There's where your tax dollars.
She never gave me a piece of pie. She always liked you better.
Well, that's true, and there's a reason. But and she always gave Lloyd a piece of black pie, one of the black guys. And I said, there's a lot of people that don't like him because he's black. And she said, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So she scored high on my list. I don't remember her name at all. It's odd that, God, how long ago has that been? 50 years or so. And I still remember some of the people.
Oh, yeah.
By name. And I certainly remember them by behavior. You missed Wimpy's.
No, I have Wimpy's.
I stand corrected. Anyway, those those little tiny restaurants downtown, cafes, were mostly at the end of the alleys. Todd's, did you get Fifth Street?
I did.
Okay. Uh, it it's it amazes me the cluster of restaurants all downtown and sizable restaurants.
15.
M&N across from Casa Bonita was a big restaurant.
15 of them.
A&G was a big restaurant.
Yeah, 15 of them.
And they were busy. I mean, they were busy like Russell's is today. That many times a day. I mean, A&G, 24 hours. People go out and drink as much as you could back in those days. And when the bars closed at midnight, they'd be there. And for something, probably enough coffee to get them home. But that's all gone from downtown. It's very refreshing to see. And most of them are specialty places. You know, Blue Sky is a brewery. The Scheme is its own type of pizza. Martinelli's has got good service. Corky's is the only traditional type mom and pop where you can get a fried egg breakfast with ham or bacon. It's refreshing to see that back. I don't know why. Maybe it's unnecessary these days. So much from the past is unnecessary, and so much that we have today is also unnecessary. But we're stuck with it.
Well, what would be the clientele of all these 15 downtown restaurants for breakfast? I mean, they did a healthy business, but would it be other business people from downtown having breakfast?
Anybody but blacks.
Well, then the question I have is, where are all these people having breakfast now? Are they stopping through McDonald's or going out to IHOP?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
Well, look at the breakfasts. You get wraps. You get muffins. You don't, very few of the people that we go to today, except the fast food joints that, I basically refuse to eat at. They don't have a sit-down meal. What a Kansan would consider a working man's meal. Of course, there aren't many working men either.
Yeah.
But and downtown, the people. There was a lot of employment at the time downtown. United Building was full of people, business people. They all had secretaries. What was one that just moved out south, which is to me a tragedy for the people and for the downtown. Kennedy and Co. Employed a lot of people.
Well, there were no empty spaces downtown.
No
empty buildings.
No.
Compared to now, where I'd say more than half of them are empty.
It seems to be. I've not made any record of it, but oh well, that's a national phenomenon. Go to the smaller places. Jeez, it's depressing.
What do you mean?
Well, Cawker City, for example, the last time I was there, how can anybody live here? Everything's closed, everything's run down, and buildings take a lot of maintenance. Believe me, I've owned 3 of them, and downtown, and they're big, they're inconvenient to get to. Most of them are high enough that you can't get to them with a ladder to do any work on them. So almost anything has to be hired done. A lot of it legally can't be done by yourself.
You'd think in a small town, though, that they would hang on to a tradition of having a small eatery because, well, I guess not, because I was traveling some years ago and I was really hungry and I stopped in Speed, South Dakota. And on the way off the highway into the little town, I passed a McDonald's and I went into town looking for a restaurant. And I found three stone two-story buildings in the main part of town that were closed that had been restaurants. The only place to get any food to eat happened to be that McDonald's. So I went back there and ate a cheeseburger at McDonald's, and everybody else in town was there too.
Yeah.
Now, I don't understand that because what's Speed, South Dakota got for McDonald's? I mean, it's really a small, small town.
Well, that irritates me very much because that's happening everywhere. You know, my ex-wife is from Tipton. You know, I really love that community and the people in it. And yet some of them would come to Salina and shop for virtually the same thing that they could get in Tipton, but for a little bit less. And I just thought that was sinful, you know, to live in a place because it's cheap, because it's safe, because you know everybody, because you're familiar with everybody, and everybody that has a business is your friend. And you come to Salina or any other town and betray that friend. You know, it's just very irritating to me. But it's ubiquitous, you
know. Before you drove a truck, what was your job in the warehouse? What kind of things did you have to do?
Oh, mostly annoying the other workers. I mean, I must have just been an unbelievable pain in the ass. I mean, worse than I am today. But, oh, God, I think back to those days.
We'll be the judge of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about, I'm thinking entertainment, like there were a lot of movie theaters downtown. Well, not a lot, but I mean 5, 6, 7 maybe. Whereas now, again, it's all back out on the margins if you want to go see. And you also get to hear a movie and a half because you can hear the one from the other side of the wall.
Yeah, and you don't get the free movies on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Which is just a goddamn zoo.
Yeah, there was the Watson, the Vogue, the Strand, the Jayhawk, and the Royal.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Rocket Drive-In and the 81 Drive-In.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Jayhawk was a real pain in the ass. I remember it because it was in a building that was not built as a theater. So it wasn't a freestanding roof. And I was just a kid, you know. Every time I went, I got stuck behind one of the supporting poles of the roof, you know. So I'd always leave there with a neck ache, looking around that damn pole. Other than that, I don't remember much about it. I remember the Royal because when I looked young enough that even when I was 14, I could get in for 12. And at that time, that was 10 cents. Well, that was a fortune back in those days. So I'd go to the Royal. Didn't matter what was showing, you know. And 3 of them you could smoke in. The Strand had a balcony. You could smoke in it. Fox Watson had a balcony. You could smoke in it. And the Vogue had a lobby with a wall with curtains, open windows, no glass, so you could watch the movie and smoke in the lobby. And of course, blow your smoke out over the audience. Very popular.
You mentioned free Saturday movies. What was that all about? I remember Saturday serials at the Watson.
Oh, they had the free movies, and years later, I was talking to a theater manager. He hated those because it was free babysitting.
Right.
Basically, what it ended up being. And so all these little bastards were were just dumped off basically to get them the hell out of the house.
Uh-huh.
And you know, in that right behind the ticket box there, which sits outdoors in this open vestibule type of thing, that was packed with kids. I mean, just absolutely packed. And then I remember very distinctly going inside, and the roof in there is broken mirrors, or the ceiling rather. And I was fascinated with that. You know, again in the late '60s, that would have been a real trip. But um, yeah, that was. I loved that theater from the get-go, but not those crowds. You know, I got very claustrophobic in those free movie crowds.
Well, that's different than the serials they used to run, right?
Yeah, yeah, they had Superman and what's the space guy?
Buck Rogers?
Buck Rogers.
Well, and I remember feeling cheated about those things because you'd go to the thing and you'd see Buck Rogers or whoever tied up, trussed up on the floor of the spaceship with the bombs that to go off, and the camera pulled back, and here's this little sputtering spaceship on a wire with sparks flying out, and it blows up. Oh, holy God, what happened? You know, and you go home and you worry all week long, like, could this be the end? And you go back, and they start showing you him trussed up and all that, but then they show you how somehow he gets loose and he throws the bomb out or whatever, and or he jumps out into a space capsule and the ship blows. He always escaped, but you didn't know it, and that used to really irritate me.
They
It's
did
like
the same thing in the first Star Wars.
being fooled, you know,
They're
all the
still
time.
doing it today. Yeah.
Well, I don't notice it so much today, but as a kid,
Well, you
I believed the
acclimated.
movies, you know.
You know, I mean, it's as our mother used to call it, sucker bait. You know, oh now I've got to see the next one.
Yeah.
You know, so double your revenue.
Westerns were a big thing. Western
Oh, of
movies,
course
they
they
were
were.
all over the place.
Sure.
The earlier ones, of course, with Roy Rogers and Gene Autry, but there were just a whole host of sort of second stringers. To Johnny Mac Brown, Lash LaRue. I can't name them all, but they were, and some of them were really kind of quirky, like Lash LaRue, who dressed all in black and had a whip.
And why would any cowboy, you know, rough and rugged guy, call himself Hopalong? You know, I mean, Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
Here
Hoppy.
comes Hoppy.
Hoppy, yeah.
Oh,
I don't know.
the
But
East,
Hoppy worked. He was
the
popular.
the Easter cowboy.
Yeah.
God, incredible.
Yeah, we believed all of it, though.
Sure, still do.
Uh, I was very much into a certain kind of comic book back in those days.
Yeah, I remember that.
EC comics. And my feeling was that they really gave me more of a sense of history than school did. And there were like a couple of us in junior high school who were onto this EC comic thing. And there was a used bookstore on Fifth Street, just around the corner from Fifth and Iron, called Olson's Used Books. And this old guy named Ole Olson. And he had stack after stack of comic books that he would get from somewhere. He must have had them shipped in from Chicago. They're all used, and you could buy them for a dime a piece. And we'd go in there every Saturday and go through every one of those comic books and find old issues of EC Comics. And it was like a treasure hunt.
A dime a piece. They were probably retailed for that.
No, they retailed for, well, yeah, I've come to think of it, he was ripping us off.
Oh, God, I mean, paperbacks were a quarter.
That's right. I remember they were a dime a piece, however. So yeah,
And
you're
Hazel
right. They didn't cost much more than that, brand new.
Hazel threw them out. Our mother.
Yeah, I had a great collection. It'd probably be worth a few $100s today, maybe more.
Oh yeah, probably.
And I went off to college, and off they went.
That's right. Finally got rid of that trash.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people my age can tell the same story about their collection of baseball cards or their collection of whatever it was they had. I had a lot of baseball cards. I have no idea where they went. they'd probably be worth money too.
I never got into the collecting thing because I can't keep track of things for one reason, but I just uh, it's just more clutter. I can get enough clutter without collecting one specific thing. I got a multitude of crap around that I have to walk around every day. So,
Well, I remember collecting tin foil for some reason.
well, to reuse probably Hazel washed
There
it.
was a big program. I think it must have been through the school. It was tin foil, and maybe it was also the cellophane strips off around a pack of gum or a pack of
Oh,
cigarettes.
that was bullshit from when I was in junior high. This one girl, I remember her name. I'm not going to say it, but I really liked her and was attracted to her, but I was so damn shy back then. I wouldn't dream of approaching her. But she said if you got that, a pack of cigarettes back then had that. It had a cellophane wrapper with a little tab on it that you pulled around. You ended up with this little cellophane piece
Strip.
of fluff
Yeah.
that weighed in the nanograms. And she said, if you get a pound of those,
You could kiss
you
me.
could you could get a blind kid, a seeing eye dog or something. And I never thought of it. So I kept saving them, giving them to her. I told my mother that one time, and she just laughed like hell. Can you imagine how many you couldn't get? A dump truck full of those things wouldn't weigh a pound.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's like the internet today. This crap comes up and everybody just swallows it.
Well, I think the internet is, we talked about how television changed the front porch socialization and the car and all the other factors that have changed
Well, air
that.
conditioning has been the worst to
Air
me.
conditioning, yeah, that's for sure.
Made us all
But
shut
I
our
think the
windows.
internet is added to that even. People become a lot more insular, I think, because of that.
Well,
I
of
mean, I
course.
told you about uh, some high school kids went on a retreat for a weekend. I think this was in Wichita, and they weren't allowed to take their cell phones with them.
Hmm.
And they were interviewing them afterwards. And the reporter asked one girl, "Well, what was it like going a whole weekend without your cell phone?" And she said, "It was great. It was a 2-day break from reality."
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And she didn't see anything wrong with that, and the reporter didn't see anything wrong with that statement, but it seems to me that there's something inverted there. Reality to her basically is being in touch on the cell phone or the computer constantly.
Hmm. Well, I see. I read on. I think it was Press TV from out of Iran that the Chinese now have a clinic that treats internet addicts. So, and I believe it. You know, I in a lot of ways I am. I communicate with people. I get my information almost solely all my news from there.
Well,
Uh,
you said long ago that human beings are just a necessary evolutionary step for intelligent machines. And I don't know if you were being facetious or not, but I took it pretty seriously. And we are getting much closer to a melding.
oh, sure. I mean, China just got rid of 60,000 workers because of robots.
Yeah.
I mean, the writing's on the wall. Now, these cars that drive themselves, I can't remember what the percentage is, but it's a vast percentage of American workers are in transportation. Bus drivers, cab drivers, truck drivers, delivery people. And that's, right now they're saying that computers can do it safer or robots can do it safer. Well, you're saving lives and you're saving, quote, money. You're just not allowing anybody to make a living.
Yeah. Well, Fred, I've enjoyed tripping through the past with you, but I see we're running out of sand.
Yeah, and we'll probably never see each other after this.
All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, buddy. And he is my buddy. I've not in my life been influenced more by one single person. On
Right
the
back
positive
at you.
side.
Right back at you.
I don't believe it.
Well, I'll
He
put it
is
in writing.
untruthful, I'll say that.
I'll put it in writing.
Okay.